Guys, I've just got back from picking up one of my beta cameras and something has absolutely destroyed the bait cage. Crazy. So during the day, this section of reef is absolutely covered in snorkelers and swimmers. But that got me thinking, I wonder what comes up into the shallows when there's nobody about. So a couple of weeks ago, I dropped a beta camera in the shallows to see what we could find. Now, the current was absolutely pumping at the time, but it was all worth it because we managed to record yet another new species on the hit list. And what makes this sighting even more special is I'm pretty sure nobody has ever seen this species here before, and certainly not this shallow. Here's the footage from drop 1. That's pretty wild, man. This drop wasn't particularly eventful at first, but I was not prepared for what showed up at the end. A couple of the emperors that we often see came up to check out the camera, including this massive long-face emperor. This one hung around for a while and was actually circling me when I went back to pick up the camera. My favourite species of emperor, the yellow lip emperor, also swam by the camera a few times. That was actually like such a nice dive. I saw 5 turtles in about 10 minutes. 4 hawksbills, one really big one, and a resting green turtle as well. It was, I guess, tucking in for the night. I'm sure you'll see some on this video. So bizarrely, we didn't actually pick up any turtles on this drop, but I did get a couple of nice clips when I went to pick the camera up. This turtle is a hawksbill. The hawksbill turtles can be easily identified by their hooked beak, the ragged scutes on their carapace, and although you can't see it here, the number of scutes they have in between their eyes. This one is a green turtle. Green turtles only have 1 pair of scutes in between their eyes, compared to the hawksbills that have 2, and they are much less common on the reefs here. Another awesome fish also showed up on this drop. This huge fish is a Napoleon wrasse, otherwise known as a humphead wrasse. Like all wrasses, these fish propel themselves through the water using only their pectoral fins, which is pretty impressive given this individual is over 1 meter long and probably weighs about 50 kilograms. This one is a male. You can tell this by the large bump on its forehead and the green-bluish coloration on its flanks. In comparison, this is a female Napoleon I filmed about 9,000 kilometers away in the Red Sea. This camera recorded for about 90 minutes or so, and I must admit, when I was watching this back, we were near the end of the footage and I was pretty convinced we weren't going to see anything cool. But then, about a minute before the camera ran out of battery, this fantastic species came swimming out of the blue straight towards the camera. This fantastic creature is a Tahitian stingray, otherwise known as a pink whipray. These rays are not well documented here, so it's awesome to get one of these on the camera. Unfortunately, the battery died whilst this guy was still checking out the cage, but it's great to tick yet another species off the hit list. If you want to see what else we've recorded so far, including massive fish, sharks, and other rare stingrays, go check out the other vids in this series on my channel. There are still hundreds of crazy things to find though, and I'm still looking for that 5-meter tiger shark. I am finally back in the water after about 3 weeks. I had to take some time off because I got a really bad ear infection that was so bad that when I went to see the doctor, she actually gasped and said, "What is that?" So I thought, you know what, that's a pretty good sign that maybe I should spend a little bit of time on dry land. So yeah, that's why I haven't been filming too much recently. Anyway, I'm just gonna go and scope a couple of new spots. We have some posts down already, but I wanna try a couple of different spots for the next couple of drops. So I'm gonna go down, check some new places out, move the post around a bit, and we'll see what we find.
So before moving the posts about, I first need to check that there's nothing that's moved in over the last few weeks. Sometimes blennies or other small fish like to sit inside the pipes. Once I was happy nothing was inside, I went looking for some new spots. I soon found this bommy that was covered in fish, including a big school of humpback snappers. Now, I'm going to try something new for these next 2 drops and actually put down 2 cameras. It'll be great to get some different angles of fish approaching the bait cage, but it also gives us a greater field of view. So hopefully we won't miss anything that might sneak up behind the camera. For the second spot, there's a big bommy in the shallows that I've been eyeing up for a while. It always looks perfect for sharks, and I actually found a shark egg casing under it a few weeks ago.
I just got back from dropping another camera. We actually dropped the camera on the first spot that I showed you in the previous clip. So not the big bommy with the cave underneath, but the more open patch. The reason I did that today was that there were more fish swimming around there, so I thought it kind of made sense. Now, the visibility was pretty rubbish, but sometimes I feel like this isn't always a bad thing, because what it does mean is that the fish have to get closer to the camera in order to see what's going on. So that may well be true. It may well be a complete load of rubbish. I've absolutely no idea, but if we see some cool stuff today, then I'm gonna claim that it's correct. Now, the only problem we have today, and you might be able to see a little bit, is that the tide is currently going out. This is all well and good, but the problem is if it goes out too far, we won't be able to swim over the reef again. Fingers crossed the tide charts are correct and we can get out. And if we do get out, fingers crossed we can get back as well, because I guess there wouldn't be anything worse than being stuck out there in the dark, in strong current, and no opportunity to get back.
When I went to pick up the camera, the water was really cold. This is great because a lot of the bigger fish and the sharks like the cooler water, so I was hopeful they might have followed it up into the shallows. This big school of humpback snappers were immediately interested in the bait cage. As normal, it took them a while to get confident, but it wasn't long until they were in a frenzy and trying to pull scraps of fish through the small holes in the cage. You can see how the feeding fish turn an intense red colour when feeding. As per usual, a few bluefin trevally also follow the scent in from downstream. I actually managed to call a couple of bluefin trevally over when I was moving the posts by rubbing my fingers together to create sound and vibrations that these predators associate with distressed fish. The bluefins are highly aggressive predators that can reach speeds just short of 30 miles per hour when hunting, and have been recorded stealing food out of the mouths of sharks. If you're a small fish on the reef, these guys are your worst nightmare. Well, actually, I guess they probably come a close second to their much bigger cousin, the giant trevally. We've recorded a few clips of GTs on previous drops, but it's awesome to see these fish swimming around so shallow. These ones are fairly small though. The biggest GTs can reach lengths of up to 170 centimeters and weigh around 80 kilograms. That's about the size of an average man. There were predators everywhere on this drop. Although fairly early on we recorded a species that I've not picked up on the cameras before. Check this out. This is a crocodile needlefish, or houndfish. They're usually solitary, but do sometimes form small groups, and are pretty much exclusively seen on the surface in the shallow areas of the reef. Bizarrely, they also don't have stomachs, and digest prey without the use of stomach acid, using an enzyme called trypsin. We also got a really cool and very lucky shot of a passing porcupine fish. This fish probably wasn't interested in the bait at all, and just happened to drift past. Another similar fish also snuck past the second camera. This is a big yellow boxfish. Less yellow and less cute when they're big like this one, although I did manage to find a youngster on a dive last week. Shortly afterwards, a yellow margin moray also came out of the rocks and started attacking the bait cage. I noticed this moray had a couple of wounds on the underside of his head. I'm not entirely sure what might have caused these, but they were probably inflicted by another moray or another predatory fish. It took a little longer than usual, but the big emperors and snappers eventually found the bait cage. The long-face emperors were the first to turn up. Shortly afterwards, a yellow-lip emperor also moved in, and interestingly tried to chase off the long-face emperor. Unusually, we didn't record any red snappers on this drop, but there were a couple of bloodlip snappers about. Unfortunately, there were no sharks or rays on this drop, But with the colder water starting to come in, I am super confident that we'll start to see more and more over the coming months. I have just got back from picking up the baited camera, and this is what it currently looks like. I actually decided to drop this one a bit deeper and not next to the big bommy that you saw in the previous clip. Reason for that was I just thought it looked better, so I put it there. Now, I've got a pretty good idea about what might have done this, but let's take a look at the footage just to confirm. I just hope it was still recording. The fish went absolutely crazy as soon as I put the camera down. Another big school of humpback snappers were immediately pulled in by the bait, and they didn't hang around trying to pull bits out. This big school of unicorn fish was also swimming around, although they weren't interested in the bait cage. It didn't seem to take the big predators long to find the bait cage at all. The red snapper was the first to move in. I always think these snappers are mean looking predators, and we even managed to get a close-up of this one with his teeth out. The red snapper was also accompanied by a couple of bluefin trevally, and shortly after, a couple of blubberlips and a yellow lip emperor, as well as this big fish that we haven't seen much of on this channel so far, the Titan triggerfish. And shortly after, we had most of the potential culprits lined up. Now, I originally thought that one of these fish might have been to blame, but after reviewing the footage, it seemed it was more of a team effort. Check this out. As expected, it was the Titan triggerfish that managed to open up the bait cage. These guys have a set of massive front teeth that they use for crunching through hard shells and coral. Historically, they haven't been much of a problem, but this one seemed to find a weakness in the bait cage, and once he'd crunched the first bit off, the bait cage was compromised and it was easy pickings. It also became clear that the snappers are pretty fearful of the Titans, and on many occasions got chased away from the bait cage as they approached for some scraps. The red snapper was a little bit braver though. It also became pretty apparent that although the Titan did a fantastic job of crunching through the plastic cage, he didn't have the right tools to suck the bait out of the bait cage. This is where the snappers come in. The one thing to remember about the reef though, is that even if you think you're the biggest and baddest, there is always a bigger fish. This monster fish is a big male Napoleon wrasse, and possibly the same one we saw on drop 1. As before, you can tell this one is a big male based on the large hump on his head and the bright green coloration on his flanks. The crazy thing about this clip is that although omnivorous, I've never experienced a Napoleon wrasse attacking the bait cage before and eating fish. He even stole a couple of big pieces from the Titan. Napoleons feed on shellfish, urchins, starfish, crabs and other fish, but they never seem to be particularly aggressive or predatory, so it's great to have gotten this on film. The Titan, snappers and Napoleon managed to open up the bait cage and empty it in about 30 minutes, and the feeding frenzy ended as quickly as it began. So I'm currently in a completely different part of the country, and this week I'm going to be dropping a load of beta cameras in the muck to see if we can find any big sharks. Now, the visibility on the first dive was absolutely ridiculous, but we did eventually manage to get the camera down, and here is a sneak peek of what we recorded. If you enjoyed this video, guys, I'd really appreciate you supporting me and hitting the subscribe button. I can promise you lots of sharks in the next couple of videos.